Good morning, everybody. I'm Jay Marcet, and I want to thank you all for coming to this lecture. This meeting is an important one for me, and I hope it is also for you, because I'll try to transmit some key concepts in the methodology the Marcet Foundation works with, which is totally different from any other. Many of you may have discovered its uniqueness during recent days as you stayed for long hours in the sun, watching the development of your kids. For those of you who didn't, I will explain to you in detail our educational method, and for those who have already seen it, I hope to confirm the conclusions you may have reached. The main objective of the Marcet Foundation is to form players who are intelligent, free, with values, and to have possibilities of employment. What does a free player mean? It's an important concept, and we need to start with the concepts. A free player, a free person, is one who can do what he wants. Freedom is, of course, the ability to do what you want within the boundaries of the rules or the law. When a player can't do what he wants, when he doesn't master a technique, a player who plays with only one leg is not free to play with the left one. A player who can't shoot at goal is not free to shoot at goal. The one who can't dribble is not free. In other words, most soccer players, even those of the Premier League, are not free. They are prisoners of mediocrity. We want our players to be free, to do what they want. However, they also have to be intelligent. An intelligent player in soccer is one who can do everything and has enough intelligence to know when, how, and where to do it. That means that if a player dribbles in a one-on-one situation at the wrong moment, even if he did it well, it is a mistake. Because he creates a counterattack, the other team will score, and therefore this player was not playing to the benefit of his team. In other words, the dribbling was fantastic, but was it what he should have done? There's an example from Ronaldinho during an important match where he was dribbling on the defense. Because it had been so easy, he turned and dribbled again. Because he told himself, I'm doing it so well, the way I dribble is so great, so I'll dribble again. But was this what he should have done? No. How many times do we see a player make a good 40-meter pass, but at the end, his teammate is at the right spot, and the opponent gets the ball? Most of the balls lost in a soccer match are due to bad decision-making, not lack of ability. There can be free players who can do everything, but who are not intelligent. We can conclude that they have all the abilities, but they are not able to use them. Now, let's speak about players with values. If you look at the clothing of the Marcet Foundation, you can see that three big H's are prominent. On the pants, on the shirts, are the stars of the Marcet Foundation, and the three H's. These relate to the concepts and values that we are constantly trying to transmit to your children in a subtle way in order that they integrate them little by little. These concepts and the values are the most important ones for a soccer player and for a person. Humility, honesty, and humanity. Humility, why? Because if a player, a child, is not humble, he will think that he is the center of the world, and he doesn't need to learn anything. He already knows everything. There are children of 8, 9, 10, 12 years old who have been told by many people that they're best in the neighborhood. When they need some advice to improve their abilities, they think they don't need it. It's a lack of humility. What is humanity? Humanity is the capacity to live together in society. The human being is a social being, and the soccer team is a group in society. If we don't have humanity, which means empathy, the ability to understand each other, generosity, everything that means humanity, we can't triumph in a soccer team. We can triumph maybe at tennis, at skateboarding, but playing soccer, It is impossible. And honesty, very important. Honesty with yourself and with others. That means, for example, what happens when a boy is not honest with himself? When there's something wrong and he always blames others? If he doesn't look at himself and say, well, today I haven't played well because of my mother, who woke me up late, or didn't pack my bag well, or because of my coach, because he didn't look at me, he didn't let me train, or because of my teammates, because they didn't pass me the ball. And him? Is he not responsible for anything? The players need to be honest with themselves. We teach them to be honest with themselves. We tell them that they are their own worst enemy, which means that the worst enemy is yourself. And this is because you don't know yourself. Here, in the Marcet Foundation, we encourage them to know themselves. Let's have a look at the Portugal national team. The star player is Cristiano Ronaldo. Messi in Argentina, Neymar in Brazil. And I want to ask, who is the star player in Spain? We might think of Iniesta, etc., but when we ask Del Bosque, he answers that in the Spanish team there are two star players. One is called humility, and the other one intelligence. And this has been seen, that in the Spanish team, if we pay attention, all the players have the same skill level, with some exceptions that can be imagined, but it's not like other teams, where Ibrahimovic, Neymar, Messi, etc. But it is a unit that is shaped by its humility, its value, and its intelligence. Another question is the possibility for employment in the future. We work so your children may gain employment later in soccer, but also inside it. That means that is a perfect opportunity for them to develop their abilities, their personality within a micro-society where they're asked to do a lot. This will be useful for them when they're adults because they realize that they can join their studies with soccer, and so they can gain employment outside soccer. Because 95% of soccer players, maybe even 99%, will not reach a professional level. If we do a calculation, we need to take into account that there are 20 leagues in the world at the top level, with 20 teams in each one, which means there are 400 teams. And within these teams, if we multiply 20 players, we have 8,000 players. And they do not change every year, but little by little. And what do we have to face? There are 200 million children who aspire to these positions. Calculate the chances if you want. It is nearly impossible. It is very difficult. For this reason, what is important is the process for a child working towards a dream. To play well at soccer. This will make him better. And afterward, thanks to his ability, the circumstances, the talents he gets after hours of work, he is a professional player, it is perfect. However, there's another problem. Soccer is a job for young people, which means it's not a job for an entire life. Between 25 years of age and 30 years, soccer is finished, the opposite of other jobs. When other jobs, one begins to mature, to be a professional. In soccer, they move because you're not useful anymore. The life of a player is very short, and the life of a former player is very long. And it's fundamental that our work is oriented towards the life of a player as well as the life of a former player. We need to take into account something very important. In a professional match, how long do you think a player has the ball at his feet, in his power? This was studied by FIFA. 2 minutes. In a match of 90 minutes, a player only has about 2 minutes. So what do we do during the other 88 minutes? What does a player have to do during the other 88 minutes? Well, of course, as you already know, to lose his marker, to find the passing lanes, cover other players, positioning, etc. Well, 88 minutes with the ball. Everything I've explained to you, what does it mean? Something fundamental. That word is one of the 4 or 5 I want to transmit to you. The player needs to think. They need to think. We need to let them think. They have to think to make their decisions. There are at least 88 minutes where they won't have the ball, where their abilities and individual technique Their ball contact will not be taken into account, even if they train hours and hours and they need to, of course. But in a certain way, they need to work at the same time on their skills when they do not have the ball. 88 minutes to think. Let's see. I was in a city when I go for work, and I found this shirt. On it was written something very interesting, funny, which attracted my attention. It was, "I don't need Google because my wife already knows everything." Well, this makes me think that all of us, when we play soccer in some way, we try to avoid information, situations that can be harmful to us. At the Marcet Foundation, we decided to create a similar shirt. And this shirt has been successful. It has created a lot of problems too. On it is written, "My son plays soccer. He doesn't need to think. His father already shouts at him everything he has to do." This sentence was not printed in Spanish, but in Russia. The truth is the parents who wear it, because it has been offered to them by their son. We tell them, "Listen, this shirt is for your father, your mother, whoever wants to wear it." And they said, "Oh, what a beautiful shirt. I'll keep it, I'll wear it on the beach." Then by one chance, one Russian friend comes along and says, "Look, this is Russian on your shirt. It's curious." And the parents, "Why? What does it mean?" And the Russian friend translates the sentence. Terrible. At this moment, they are very angry and upset. They ask, "What does the Marcet Foundation mean by this?" However, a bit later, they call us and say, "Thank you for the present. We perfectly understand it." With this anecdote, I want to communicate that we need to let our children think when they play soccer. But we could offer this shirt to a coach too, because there are coaches who also don't let children think. Later, I'll comment on this. So, talking about thinking, we need to think. You also need to know that if we are working with your children, we need to work towards something to reach a goal. In other words, we need to reach a talent, a kind of talent. There's a theoretical debate about whether talent is genetic or something we get with work. I usually ask, is there anybody who believes that it's genetic? I can ask it now. So is there anybody who believes that talent is genetic? Yes, you believe this. So if talent is genetic, I wonder, why do we work with children? Some people may say, because if you don't work with them, the talent disappears. They need to work it. However, we could argue that if talent is something that can disappear, it's not genetic, because we don't lose genes. Talent is something you obtain because genetic makeup is permanent. It's an interesting debate, isn't it? The truth is that both opinions are right. For this reason, this debate, we need to make a decision as the Marcet Foundation. Why? Because if we think that talent is something genetic, why is our work important? It would be useless because we'd think that the person who doesn't have any talent can't play soccer because there's no way to transmit it to him. However, what is our theory? Our theory contrasts with the latest studies dealing with the brain and the neuron connections. Talent is the product of our work. We need to have innate conditions, but with work, we can achieve talent. In these scientific books, this conclusion is reached, and you, thanks to this concept, you need to think that your children can obtain what they want to. Of course, if I worked for hours and hours, I wouldn't be able to play in the NBA because I'm too small. I could have been, of course, a good point guard, a small point guard, or a very small point guard. It's clear that in sports where body type is important, there is an obstacle. Most of the sports have a body type. In other words, they need a special physical characteristic. But there are others where there is no body type. And soccer is one of them. In soccer, all kinds of players can play. The very short ones are the Spanish ones, the small ones, the tall German players, the medium-height Danish ones. The Peruvian players are a bit stockier. Cazali, the Chilean player, who was called the manager, was a bit stocky, but he was a wonderful player. In soccer, everyone who wants to play can play. It's the only sport where there is no obstacle, no excuse. So if we are working with our children, it means that we are working to reach a goal. We can't make a mistake with this goal because your children, who are 8 or 9 years old, will never be 8 or 9 years old again. We can't lose this opportunity. You need to keep in mind that for us, talent is not so important. What is important for us is the value you give this talent. For example, if we think about the film called Zorro, which took place 200 years ago, what talent did Zorro have? That of sword fighting, didn't he? He was very skilled, and his life was going well too. He dedicated a lot of hours to work, and he was admired. Even if he was not paid, there were professionals like the Three Musketeers who were paid for this. Nowadays, sword fighting has no value. For this reason, it's important to work with value, with talent, one that will be appreciated later. So what do you have to think about and decide about in the Marcet Foundation? We especially need to think about which talent is important for players under 15 years of age. Which talent will be asked for by the famous coaches of the famous European teams? And for us, we are sure that this talent is intelligent. Intelligence is a key talent. Our work should be therefore oriented towards creating intelligent players. How? Innate conditions, which are provided by genetics, are needed. After a lot of work, we achieve talent. The mother of Johan Cruyff, a Barcelona player in the 70s, who was the most expensive signing in history at the time, was one of the ladies who cleaned the Ajax Stadium. And they had a house very close to the stadium. They almost lived in the stadium. We can say that Johan Cruyff was almost born in the stadium. He said that he dedicated thousands of hours of life in this stadium. When the youth team, the children were there, he was a 2-, 3-, 4-year-old little boy, and he grew up with the players of the first team. The second team, he was always playing in the street, in the stadium, in the locker rooms, wherever. Hours and hours playing soccer. So much that he became the talent we know today. And Johan Cruyff said it was not only about genetics, that he had been born in the stadium. If his mother had worked there, if he hadn't dedicated all these hours, he would not have been a soccer player. He would have been something else. In other words, he had the innate conditions, but he worked so hard to achieve this level that raised him to be the player we know today. And we have the famous case of Picasso, for example, who said that inspiration has to be found working. If you find it, you're not working, it is useless. Inspiration is a source of talent for an artist. And he said inspiration, if you're not working hours and hours making mistakes, is useless. In other words, the important thing is to work your intelligence. And it is possible. However, when we deal with intelligence, we have to deal with a fundamental issue. 15 years of study have shown us, it turns out, there are a number of intelligences. We have all these different intelligences. The artistic one, the mathematical one, the spatial one, the artistic one for the artists, the mathematical one for the numbers, spatial one for the architects, the social one for politics. Well, it's not working so well now. The communicative one for the journalists and people who write, the sports ones for the sports kinetics, the musical ones, and the emotional one. For this reason, we understand the dilemma we can solve. Why these players were so limited outside when they were so intelligent on the pitch. Are there players who could do nothing more than sport? Because they only have sports ability. For this reason, people have outstanding mathematical, spatial intelligence, etc. Einstein himself, for example, would be a disaster at soccer because he had another kind of intelligence. The sports intelligence has its own characteristics that we'll see later. Therefore, it means that your children are players specifically, even if they don't have a high IQ, does not mean that they don't have a high sports intelligence. The IQ is dead. It is useless. I'm burying an old evaluation with this theory because it's not valid anymore with the theory of multiple intelligences. The IQ is used only by some countries of the West for curriculums without being aware that it's not interesting anymore. Well then, remember that intelligence is something we can work with. How can we work intelligence? Intelligence can work solving problems. In soccer, you have two kinds of problems, the theoretical and the practical problem. The theoretical problems are the ones that when the solution is found, they are solved. 2 + 2 = 4. The problem is finished. In soccer, we deal with practical solutions. It is, I have a problem and I have to solve it. But when I have solved it, I know what I have to do, and I do it. I need to pass the ball, to dribble, to do a one-on-one, I have to. And when I have to be able to do it, for this reason, the players need to work practical intelligence. So we are dealing with the educational process of the Marcet Foundation. We have 4 phases or processes. The first is called unconscious ignorance. It's when a child is not aware that he doesn't know anything. It is the first phase when a child wrongly thinks that he knows everything and therefore the child is not aware of his ignorance. It is this phase that we get the children, and the first job of the coach is to bring them to the next process, the one we call conscious ignorance. In other words, the child is conscious that he doesn't know, and the child can say, that's true. I could see that in my neighborhood I was very good, but here I'm not. I need to learn. I have to learn many more things. Well, this phase is the best. Why? Because in this process we can start to work. The child moves to the following phase, which is conscious knowledge. The student is aware that he knows and executes the movement, but slowly. Why? Because he is thinking. Because he hasn't mastered them well, but because he is learning them. In other words, he learns how to do a one-on-one, and he does it by thinking. Now leaning the body, a step there, he is doing it. One clear example is, how do you learn to drive? Above all, thinking. To start, I need to see the traffic around me. You know all the movements, but you need to think, and therefore you drive slowly and dangerously. But it's the same with soccer. This phase is the slow and dangerous one, because you can lose the ball, because you can have some problems. But you undeniably need to pass through this phase. So in this phase, the child also learns, but he can't stop there. We need to take the child to the next phase, which is called unconscious knowledge. We have to move from initial unconscious ignorance to this state. It's when a child can do things automatically. He doesn't think and he doesn't know why he is doing them. For example, when driving. It's how you drive now, loosely and directly. In other words, totally automatically. Being able to do everything without thinking. You arrive at home the same way as every day. You don't know how you got there, because everything is automatic without thinking. What is the basis of this? It's based on experience, on the hours and hours driving, and hours planning, training, working the way we're going to explain now. In this phase, the children already have their background, their experience, and they add all the circumstances of the previous experiences in their hard drive. Therefore, they'll act without thinking. It is automatic. It is the final phase we have to reach. How can we reach it? We have a child who comes, and the first thing we have to do is to prevent him from adopting this attitude of impulsiveness, acting on impulse. In other words, a boy comes who starts to play, to train, to do things without thinking, on impulse, without thinking. And this is a normal situation for children. But we have to tell them, no, stop. Think about it. And the child says, I have to think. Perfect. And so we teach them to generate sports intelligence. Imagine that I'm in a soccer match. I'm on the sideline, leaning over, and I don't have space. There are 30 seconds left to finish the match. We're losing 0-1. And I receive a ball in the air. Well, it is a problem. I need to make decisions. So my generative intelligence gives me some different options and solutions in the face of the problem and of the specific situations within. So you have this option, this one. And then the performance intelligence comes in play, the one that decides which option proposed by the generative intelligence is the best. And I make the decision. But keep in mind, the performing one is not important. It only decides. And the generative one is the one that generates opinions, different alternatives, in order that I can make a decision. And then what happens? When I've already decided what I have to do, I change fields. I perform an oriented control. The ball comes up. When it comes up, I pass it 40 meters. Because I already decided it was the best option in the face of the problem I faced. In a soccer match, there are no thing more important than problems for a child, and he has to make his own decisions. He has to think, to read a game. This is what intelligence is. And so, what happens? The boy has to do it as fast as he can. Because, for example, if there's an opponent at 4 meters away and I receive the ball, in 1 second, the opponent makes up the 4 meters. I have him very close to me, and I've already lost my advantage. 1 second is gold in soccer. In other words, you can't waste time. In soccer, speed is not measured by the person who moves faster from point A to point B, but the one who thinks faster, the one who positions himself best, the one who reads the match best, and we need to work in this way. Here, we have a fundamental issue, and it is, how can we work? In other words, a coach who is not intelligent, can he teach players to be intelligent? Yes. Why? Because of the methodology. The methodology of the Marcet Foundation could be very modern, but no. It is more than 2,500 years old. We based our methodology on the Mathematic of Socrates. We will not enter in philosophic discussions, but if we look at Socrates, his mother, who was a midwife and who dedicated herself at the time to helping women give birth to their sons, Socrates said that he also dedicated himself to helping men to give birth to their entire potential. And how did he do it? With the system of the Mathematic, which was to propose things, questions, in order that the disciple reach conclusions on his own. And therefore, the disciple reached what his master wanted him to do. So how can we apply it to soccer? It is simple. Can you see this? Do you know what it is? It is a GPS. So I put the GPS in the car and I say, I want to go to Cantavieja, and I don't know where it is. I start the GPS and it begins to give me instructions. It says, take the first street, road 10. At the roundabout, take the third exit. Gives me all the instructions perfectly. And I arrive at Cantavieja. One friend calls me and tells me, are you in Cantavieja? How can I get to Cantavieja? Well, I don't know. I arrived in Cantavieja, but I don't remember. Why? Because the GPS gave us all the instructions, and it didn't let us think. It is simple. We followed the instructions one after the other. And for this reason, I'm in favor of another system, the classic roadmap. And on this map, there are all the instructions, all the information, all I need to know to get to Cantavieja. But I need to make decisions. I have to make mistakes. it is something very important. Mistakes. I have to make mistakes. I have to wonder, first of all, where is Cantavieja? I'm worried about knowing where Cantavieja is. Is there snow or not? I take the motorway. I make a mistake. I will arrive to Cantavieja making hundreds of decisions, bad or good decisions, and making mistakes, but I will arrive. And when my friend calls me in Cantavieja, listen, Cantavieja, I will explain everything. When my friend calls me, I'll remember everything. And I will explain to him everything he needs to know to get to Cantavieja. And some coaches pretend to teach soccer as the GPS does. In other words, they give all kinds of instructions. They don't let the child think, and for this reason, the child flows as water, with the river at the end, without being able to memorize anything. He may have played well in this match, but he doesn't know why. He follows the instruction of the coach, who has, of course, a different vision than the one of the child. Shoot, pass, dribble, go forward, stop. And the boy does everything very precisely. Furthermore, most of the time, as we have seen with the shirt I showed you before, in addition to the coach, there's the father coach, the mother coach, the friend coach, etc. Therefore, the child remains deaf. In the Marcet Foundation, what we do is to be constantly proposing that they reach the answer on their own. The solution has to come with their own belief, and for this, they have to have what is called the ability to adapt oneself to the mistake. We need to explain to them that making mistakes, failing, are steps on the road to success. When you make a mistake on your own, you have to be able to think why you made it. What do you have to do? How can you correct it? And when you discover it, it is the same situation as when somebody ties a tie. Well, now, I don't wear ties very much, but I remember before when I didn't know how to tie a tie, after thousands of times doing it, I learned how to do it. I was able to tie a knot without my father showing me, because it's difficult to teach how to tie a tie. It is weird and complicated. However, I managed to learn, and I was able to do it perfectly. For this reason, I want to say that children with mistakes, with the decisions they make thinking, they can improve at soccer. And above all, with the talent we want, which is sports intelligence. We can conclude that they need to reach sports intelligence first of all, and after, the technical abilities they need in a way that is complementary to physical conditioning. An intelligent player, if he doesn't have the technical abilities, will not be able to execute what he thinks. Afterwards, if he doesn't have physical conditioning, he will not be able to think or execute. And then there's the question we ask the children. Look, a monkey, a good monkey, stronger than us, faster, and who jumps more, but he can't play soccer, but he doesn't have to be intelligent. For this reason, a lot of children are obsessed with their bodies specifically, to be stronger, to run faster, to do more. But why? What is the purpose? And they don't develop intelligence. And these players are useless. Well, they're useful, but not for soccer. Of course, if a boy dedicates 10 years of his life to a team, wherever, to train at soccer, but he doesn't train in the proper way, he will not achieve sports intelligence, and will have lost 10 years of his life. Because he will not get to, I will not say a professional level, but to be valid in his college, to have self-esteem, to bring something to his group, in order that afterwards a girl likes him, for example, because he plays soccer well, and this is the most important, at college, at work, to have friends who value your development, to have teachers who can see your personal development. It's a common idea to think that training soccer is only used for becoming a professional. Well, for tennis, for golf, for these things, no. These sports are trained for playing well, without any excessive ambitions. Well, soccer is the same. To play soccer well doesn't mean to be a professional. It means that you develop a series of abilities at an early age, a period where if you manage to do well, it will favor your development for absolutely everything. Your self-esteem, and above all, what is really important, your personal convictions within society. Perfect. There are 4 main points so a child doesn't give up soccer. The first one is the teacher has to be a leader. The coach has to be a leader for him. And most of the time we, the parents, what we can't achieve ourselves, we need to call the leader coach because in 5 minutes, he'll manage to do it. The kids of a certain age are like this. But to be a leader, the coach has to be very prepared, to have a lot of personality, has to work very hard, and to be a professional. The second point, the child has to have friends. A team where there is bullying, where he's not accepted, where a child doesn't have friends, it is terrible. It is really important the child has friends, even if it is not a good team. He has to play with friends, and his coach has to be a leader. The third point is they have to notice that they are learning, that every day of training, they learn something and they improve. He has to see the evolution. Kids are clever. They have to notice that they are improving. And last, they have to win matches. In other words, if they lose all the matches, of course it will not be fine. They need to win some matches. And what is the technique that we use? It is one that is called intense practice. In other words, it is fundamental that a kid develops all his capacity of learning and of concentration. We have to propose him some obstacles, a difficulty in the exercise he will perform, which has to be just a step above his capacities. If we propose a child a training a difficulty which is excessive for him, he'll see that he can't do it even if he makes an effort, and he'll suffer stress and anxiety. I can't do this, it's too much for me, and he will think, I'm useless at soccer. Because I'm not talking about a training session. I'm talking about integrating a group in which you're asked for a level you can't reach. Well, so what happens? That if we pose him a very simple exercise that the player already masters, he will suffer the stress of boredom. This is a drag, I don't like it, I already know that. And it is wrong too. Therefore, we need a group to be homogeneous and always at the same level. And the coach has always to propose a level of difficulty which is a bit above their capacities, but just a step above, so they know that with work, they can reach this higher level. And you need to see what intense practice is. When you reach it, the training flows. We can notice that the kids are concentrated. For the coach, too. Everything goes perfectly, and they finish learning what was proposed, and they also finish physically tired, because intense practice requires absolute concentration and a willingness so that more than 1 hour and a quarter is impossible. They have to take a break to recover. In real life, when someone develops this situation, this is a scientific issue, he develops the myelin. The myelin is a kind of cover, like the one on electric cables, that covers the axons, which are the connections of the brain with the neurons. And the greater the myelin is, the more plastic it is, the more protection the electric impulse will have, and therefore be faster and more precise. With it, the brain is able to be more precise, faster, and to learn quicker. This is a scientific justification, working with intense practice. A step above your capacities, you develop the myelin. In this, you may have learned in your own experience when you're doing something you feel a difficulty, studying a language, studying or preparing something, but you see that you can do it. And this is a system we work with. And the last thing, we have to say that this methodology has more than 9,000 hours of work. And to reach this amount, it's important to know that our courses are not disjointed. Thus, in regards to intelligence, we have to work theoretically, although I want to go to the practical. But you'll say, how do we work it? How do we do it? Well, we have 16 points on the screen. After these 9,000 hours, we add the 90 hours of the course. What have you done? You've taken another step. The classes aren't disjointed. When the year comes, during the annual course, the 90 practice hours are hours that we add up for the complete objective, for your personal project. To be an intelligent player, we have 16 key points. First, to concentrate, pay attention, or recognize the problems of the match. To make quick decisions, to master the pace of the match, to not be a hurry. To be able to anticipate the consequence of one decision, etc., etc. There's 16 and they're on the web page. You can take a picture with your mobile if you want. And this is what we work in order at the end. The kid has obtained these qualities. Of course, you say, where's the technique? The technique and all the physical condition are a question of parallel work. We, in addition to working from the neck to the feet, work also the most important thing, which is from the neck to the head. Any computer, any device from which you remove the chip is useless. For this reason, the Americans sold their heavy industries, and they dedicate themselves to the chip industry because it is what is really valuable. And here it's the same. In the physical preparation, which is the individual technique, you need to work hours with intense practice. But in the end, an intelligent player is one who plays easily, who knows his limits without complication, who knows what he has to do, who plays in a useful way for the team. A coach says, and a player who has it, I want him. Would you like children to have these characteristics? Well, it's not complicated. Working is the most complicated factor. The other things are questions of hours and hours. But the problem is knowing how to work and with which technique. In other words, if you train a lot of hours, without the intense practice, you don't improve. You're wasting your time, not in order to play soccer, but to improve at soccer. Sport in itself is not good. Sport can hurt. There's a lot of violence. It can bring a lot of problems. So you take your child to a team where there are no values, where you're surrounded by kids whose actions after the match are to go to the pubs, take drugs, etc. This is real. You think, it's good to play soccer. I'm not worried. No. No. Is he a group where he should be? It is dangerous, like everything. Food, for example. Is it good or not? To eat is good. If you do it moderately, without drinking, etc. Nothing is good or bad in itself. It depends on how you use soccer, if it's good or bad. The secret is to use it well. And something important, what we have to do first is when we have chosen the center, the team, or where the kid is going to learn to play soccer, we need to think that we also participate in this training, but not as the protagonists, and not even as the supporting actors. It is the territory of your sons, where they have to fly. You need to teach them how to fly, and not as a chicken in a corral, but as eagles. Because sometimes we are already used to the fact they fly as chickens, and the problem is to know how they will fly as eagles. We don't respect what is called soccer for the kid. Last, I want to say to you, you do not ask your 8-year-old son to write a novel. No. You ask him first to learn handwriting, how to write, grammar, to learn first all these steps so that they can argue, and they have enough experience to create a story, and thereby a novel. In soccer, we are asking them to write a novel at 8 years old. We are asking them to play as TV professionals at 8 years old. And yes, sir, if a kid at 8 years old doesn't know how to dribble, to shoot a goal, don't worry. It is not the time. It will come. He has time. In his territory. It's not our business. We are not the protagonists. We need to protect them, choosing the best place for them to go, absorbing them, supporting them, and avoiding them offering us the shirt I showed you before. Well, I have to finish here now before the session is starting. If you have any doubts, feel free to ask. I will be there. Thank you, everybody.